Hello, my name is Cody. Welcome to the Unifying Field podcast, where we journey beyond the black and white into the vast spectrum of human experience. Here we explore the great question of why we are here, seeking wisdom in all traditions and unity in our diversity. My mission is to bridge worlds, uniting hearts and minds through conversation, curiosity, and the shared wonder of existence. So take a deep breath in through your nose, open your mind, and join me as we step into the infinite together. Welcome to today's show. In the previous episode, I discussed the importance of being able to think for yourself, seeing through the conditioning, aka the illusions that the world attempts to control your thoughts through. That concept is known as mental sovereignty, and I talked about how I believe that is the real spiritual warfare that is going on. Recently, my family and I went to Silver Dollar City in Branson, Missouri, which is a great old-time Western-themed amusement park with roller coasters, food, and tons of craft shops. It always makes me really hungry because it smells so good from all the delicious food. And there's lots of fun rides and activities for all ages. My favorite rides are the powder keg and wildfire. Well, in the swings. I'm still a little kid at heart and I love to swing. When it is busy, like it was on that day, there's so many people that if we stop for a moment to help one of our girls with something, my mind created the illusion of standing in a river. Have you ever noticed that? If you're standing still in a river facing upstream, the water flows up to you and around you. In the same way, people are flowing up to you and then divert around you when you stop at a place with tons of people moving around. Sometimes you stop at a roller coaster or a place to get some food. It was a lot like life. I found this feeling really fascinating. As we enjoyed our time exploring the park, you would have people stopped in different places and you would have to walk around them. These people are like boulders or trees that the river must flow around. Or in the case of life, they mimic the obstacles in your way. Perhaps you stop at a food stand for a bite to eat and then stop at a roller coaster. And of course, there's many pathways to any destination in the park. These are like the many decisions that we make in life and little directional events that adjust our life's trajectory. Today, I want to jump into the river of life, that is, to experience its flow and better understand it, or rather, shine some awareness on the nature of life in this physical form. It's not usually something we think about if life is going really good, unless you're used to things being really bad, in which case you might be like, when's it going to go south again? Should be any time now. But then, when things are going wrong, we might be able to see that eventually things will get better. If someone close to you dies, things are going to suck for a while as you mourn their loss. Of course, life will never be the same without your loved one. But in time, we overcome these challenges and learn to live in this world without them. Life doesn't stay in any one zone all the time. It ebbs and flows, and it's kind of like a sine wave in mathematics, where there is a S-curve that looks a lot like a wave in the ocean. Have you ever been to the ocean and stood in the surf, letting the waves hit you? The ocean is really rough, and it doesn't care whether you are there or not. It'll repeatedly hit you hard over and over again. If you stand facing it, or with your back toward it, it's likely going to knock you off your feet. But from a different perspective, my buddies and I used to land-based shark fish, and we would kayak the shark baits through the same surf. And it was way worse from that perspective because you aren't going through the wave. You're riding up and down the waves, experiencing the fullness of each wave. And of course, sitting down on the water in a 12-foot plastic human-powered toy makes a 6-foot wave seem a bit bigger. I can't even count the times that I've been wrecked in the surf by waves, especially coming back to shore when my back was to the waves. At least by standing in the surf, I could turn and let the waves hit me from the side. And in that way, the waves hit me with less impact, and I am somewhat stable on my feet. In the kayak, it was practically a rodeo ride. When we look back at the sine wave, you have your neutral state of zero, which cuts the sine wave in half, creating a positive and negative peak. I will refer to this neutral point often as the equilibrium point, the neutral point, or even the middle path throughout this episode. The sine wave mimics the flow of life, and our ability to respond to life's circumstances, good or bad, ebb or flow, positive or negative, is what enables us to experience a more joyful life. Or if we don't respond well to it, we end up suffering more pain than we really need to. I think a big part of the struggle is just not understanding how life works until it runs us over. We float around in a kind of sleep state where we are, for the most part, unaware and somewhat robotic in our approach to life. What I mean by that is we're just kind of like worker ants trying to make a living, support our family, make our government leaders and corporations rich, raise our kids, be a good member of society, hoping and praying for things to stay good, and so on. Eat, sleep, and repeat. And we kind of avoid the idea that bad things happen, but then we are blasted off into heaven or hell from the events of our human experience and end up being consumed by the positive and negative emotions that come with that. There's nothing wrong with being a part of the human experience and experiencing the vast sea of emotions. And I don't want to take away from that because that is part of why we are here. It is my understanding that outside of this physical life, we may not be able to experience feeling emotions in the same way as we do in human form. And while we may not ultimately be human beyond this body, we are here to be human for a short period of time. But I think if we add more awareness to the nature of the physical plane, we may lessen the blow of strong events and appreciate it more for the truth of its nature, instead of being consumed or run over by it. Today I want to discuss not just the nature of life's river-like flow and the forces at play, but also how clinging to paths that don't serve our higher purpose is actually detrimental to our growth. Even beyond that, what is our true purpose in life? What is God's will for our lives? And does this relate to life's flow? What kind of challenges do you face when trying to go with the flow? I want to begin with clinging. I want to try something unique with this episode by using some visualization. I don't need you to be in a meditative state for this. It should just pop right into your mind as we go. For example, if I told you to try not to think of a white unicorn with a pink mane and tail, flying across the mostly clear night sky full of sparkling, diamond-like stars as it poops a rainbow of yellow, orange, blue, green, red, and purple. Visualization just kind of happens automatically in the screen of your mind. All right, let's get started. First, let's take a few deep breaths, just to relax a bit and be in the moment. This is such a simple idea, and while some teachings feel more profound and exciting, the greatest, most profound realizations and truths begin in the moment, away from the thoughts that seduce you and drag you into the depths of the past or the future. You can achieve being in the moment simply with a few deep breaths, and you can master it with regular meditation. For this, just continue doing whatever you are doing, driving to work or mowing the yard, whatever. Breathing is just what we do. And I want you to breathe deep in through your nose and hold it for 3 seconds. And release it out and let all of your stress and worries go as your breath leaves your mouth. Now a second time, breathe deep in and hold for 3 seconds. And then release it out your mouth. One more time, deep breath in, hold it. Now release all your stress and worry out your mouth. Welcome to this moment. To begin, I want you to jump into the river with me. Picture this. It is a warm summer's day with songbirds singing their cheerful tunes, natural wildflowers beautifully painting the setting, and trees overhanging the river providing shade and peacefulness. Pretty clouds are passing through a mostly clear sky. You're camping with your friends and family at the river. There's a great swimming hole close by where it is deep enough to swim. There's a rope tied high up in a tree that allows people to climb up on the rocks and swing out over the water. There are people laughing and having fun along the edges of the swimming hole. You climb up on the rocks and grab the rope swing. The rope is a little janky, a little ragged. It's frayed and beginning to unravel in some spots, and clearly it has been attached to this tree for years. But somehow it still works. As you pull yourself up with your arms, you lift your legs up so that your feet don't drag the ground. And you quickly swing out over the water like a rocket. You swing out into an arc and begin going up towards the sky. And at that moment of weightlessness, where you're just floating in the air, before gravity forces you to begin swinging back towards the bank, you let go. And in slow motion, you begin to fall gently into the pool of the river. You crash violently into the water with bubbles and a cloud from dirt from the floor of the river stirred up all around you. The bubbles and the cloudiness begin to settle while you orient yourself to this new water environment. You're under the water. You're at peace, and your eyes are open. The water is flowing gently around you. While you're here, I want to tell you a story. This is the opening story from a gem of a book called Illusions by Richard Bach. Once there lived a village of creatures along the bottom of a great crystal river. The current of the river swept silently over them all, young and old, rich and poor, good and evil. The current going its own way, knowing only its own crystal self. Each creature in its own manner clung tightly to the twigs and rocks of the river bottom, for clinging was their way of life, and resisting the current was what each had learned from birth. But one creature said at last, I am tired of clinging. Though I cannot see it with my eyes, I trust that the current knows where it is going. I shall let go and let it take me where it will. Clinging, I shall die of boredom. The other creatures laughed and said, Fool, let go and that current you worship will throw you tumbled and smashed against the rocks, and you will die quicker than boredom. But the one heeded them not, and taking a breath, did let go, and at once was tumbled and smashed by the current against the rocks. Yet in time, as the creature refused to cling again, the current lifted him free from the bottom, and he was bruised and hurt no more. And the creatures downstream, to whom he was a stranger, cried, See a miracle, a creature like ourselves, yet he flies. See the Messiah come to save us all. And the one carried in the current said, I am no more Messiah than you. The river delights to lift us free, if only we dare let go. Our true work is this voyage, this adventure. But they cried the more, Savior, all the while clinging to the rocks, and when they looked again, he was gone, and they were left alone making legends of a Savior. The moral of this story, at least from my current perspective, is that when we cling to things that don't serve us, when we resist the opportunities and guidance that life provides us, we stagnate in our growth. Hey, if someone wants to live their life in absolute comfort, unwilling to change, that is perfectly fine. But some of us thirst for learning and growth, and it takes courage to let go of attachments that are holding us back. And often, realizing that clinging to our old ways is the obstacle that prevents us from making progress. But it is certainly not straightforward at all. And that is part of the challenge, or the game, or the fun of life. Another lesson from that story is that there are forces at work that we may not understand, and sometimes it is worth trusting that the river knows where it is going. In our case, the river refers to life, God, the universe, perhaps the spirits who guide us, and so on. We have such a narrow lens to view life through, and we cannot see the entirety of the situation. For example, being late for work due to a detour may upset you, but something else may have saved your life by stopping you from going a certain way. We just can't see the whole of the plan. And to be honest, the plan for our lives is a giant mystery. So like I said, the flow of life is not straightforward. I think a lot of that is just awareness and introspection, and we'll go deeper into that later. But for now, I want to discuss the forces that are at play as we navigate life. Have you ever noticed how life seems to be a constant tug of war between the good moments and the bad? One day life is good, you have a good job, your relationship with your partner is solid, everything is just kind of the way it should be. But then you get laid off, and now your finances are bad, and you begin fighting a lot with your partner. Nothing seems to be going right anymore. I don't know about you, but I much more enjoy the good moments than the bad. However, I am sure that most of us learn and grow more when times are tough. You're kind of forced to. And in hindsight, I end up becoming thankful for the hard times because those are the times that motivate me to get up off my butt and actually do something. It's kind of like the saying, give someone a fish and you feed them for a day. Teach them to fish and you feed them for a lifetime. When life isn't so good, we have to put in work to make it better. Whereas when life is good, we can be lazy and stagnate in our growth. You know, you don't have to work so hard for the fish when everything is good. One of my favorite ideas I've heard in a guided meditation was to relax, just like a handful of rubber bands thrown onto the table. When I heard that, I thought, of course, life is just like a rubber band. It made so much sense to me. All right, hear me out. I want you to visualize this. It's a simple idea to explain the pull of forces we deal with on a daily basis. In your mind, I want you to draw a large circle. Next, I want you to draw a straight line vertically down the center of the circle, from the top to the bottom, splitting it equally in half. On each half of the circle, I want you to write good, positive, and or high on one side, and then bad, negative, and or low on the other side. Each half is going to represent life as good and life as bad. At the very center of the circle, I want you to draw a small circle and write me inside it. Now I want you to take a rubber band and stretch it with one finger up to the very top of the circle, at the top of the line that splits the circle in half. Now stretch the rubber band with a finger from your other hand down to the very bottom. At this point, you have a circle with a line splitting it in half with good on one side and bad on the other side. You have a small circle at the center with me inside it, and you have a circular rubber band stretched from the top to the bottom, and the me circle is within the two bands. Since this is in your mind, now you can use a third hand and begin walking one way or another within the two strands of the stretched out rubber band. The rubber band strand in between you and the good half will be the bad force. Similarly, the rubber band strand that is in between you and the bad side is the good force. And at the very center, you are at the equilibrium point. What does that mean? There are always forces pushing and pulling on you. But here in the center, you are balanced and are stable. We'll assume there is always a potential to move in one direction or another, but otherwise you're in a stable spot. Kind of like when you're standing perpendicular to the ocean surf with your feet spread out, letting the waves flow through you. If you begin moving in one direction, say towards good, you're out of the point of equilibrium, and the opposing bad force is pulling you back to center. In the same way, if you move towards bad, you're again out of equilibrium, and the opposing force of good will be pulling you back to center. Are you following along? Hopefully this is all making sense. This is how I imagine existence to operate. We are constantly in a state of trying to be in equilibrium, even if it is unconscious or not even us doing it. Having struggled with panic attacks before, that would certainly be a state that is out of equilibrium. You are far into the bad side in a panic attack, and when you can't breathe and it feels like you're having a heart attack, that's what I mean. It's not a place you want to be for long. You want to relax and return to a peaceful mind, aka the equilibrium point I'm referring to, as soon as possible. On the good side, while it does feel great, you'll always calm down from the excitement and return to equilibrium. It's kind of like our mind's home base. For those of you that are science nerds like myself, when you're at the center, you're kind of in a state of homeostasis, which in biological terms means the tendency toward a relatively stable equilibrium for biological factors such as that of body temperature, glucose, blood pH regulation, water balance, and electrolyte balance. So biological systems lean towards maintaining equilibrium. And if something is added to a system in homeostasis, such as eating something with lots of sugar, the body will try to return to its homeostatic state, which explains why you might temporarily get a sugar rush, but may later crash as your body is attempting to return to normal. If you drink a ton of water, you're likely going to have to pee a lot as your body levels out its electrolytes and returns to equilibrium as well. Where am I going with this? When we walk in the direction of good or bad, positive or negative, or if life thrusts us in one direction or another, filled with all of that intense emotion, we will naturally return back to our equilibrium. Sometimes it is quick, and other times, such as working through grief, it may take a long time. You do not stay ecstatically happy, nor do you stay in deep sadness or anger. It may take us years to make it through the process of mourning for a loss, but one day we will achieve equilibrium and be able to continue on. Now, our mental struggles can trick us into thinking we are permanently in a negative state, and I would argue that these conditions are incredibly powerful illusions that take a lot of work to overcome. But in the state of awareness, in this moment, in the part of us that is beneath, where we may be, and I quote, screwed up, the part of us that is actually us, we simply are, and we are in that homeostatic equilibrium state. Initially, this may seem kind of annoying for, say, when your life is great and you're super happy. Why couldn't my life be this way forever? I mean, technically it could, though it is unlikely. But here's the reality. When we are happy, for example, say when we marry the love of our life, the excitement of the wedding and honeymoon eases. You move into a more leveled out state. It's still great overall, but the excitement wears off and we begin to return to our center point, the point of equilibrium. That point where you settle into when life is good, I will call joy. We had this amazing experience and we are so happy. Now let's reside in the equilibrium of joy. But then something bad happens. Your job just announced that you're getting laid off from work. Uh-oh. Now you're in the bad zone. Things are going downhill in a hurry, right? Can't pay your rent, can't afford food, and so on. Now you start arguing with your partner because of your financial struggles. But after the initial shock wears off, you return to at least close to your equilibrium point. Sure, you aren't necessarily happy in the moment, but when you return home, you can now begin to overcome the challenges you face. This is the key. This would be considered resilience. Don't get me wrong on this. That equilibrium point does not stay in one spot throughout our life. As we grow and better ourselves, today's normal state is likely yesterday's dream state. And where you'll be years from now will make today's state be very uncomfortable to inhabit. What I consider my normal state from 12 years ago, filled with its depression and anger and alcohol, will be extremely uncomfortable to inhabit for more than a few minutes today. Not just that, but your ability to bounce back is strengthened through time and growth. So even if you reach especially deep lows in certain situations, you bounce back much quicker to your equilibrium than you would have been able to in the past. How quickly you're able to return to center where you are most stable, aka your resiliency, depends on how you're able to respond with experiences that pull you out of equilibrium. The high horse you could be knocked off of from that point where things seem great is but an illusion. Perhaps an easier idea to visualize would be if you took a drug to get high. The high point is, of course, only an illusion. Or similarly, a low from a bad trip on psychedelics is also an illusion, though the experience is quite powerful and convincing. Let's see how the flow of life plays out using a modified version of an old Chinese parable. You just got married. You have a nice little house and are building a little family. Life is good. But then you lost your job and now you can't make your car payment. The bank threatens to repossess your car, can't pay rent or buy groceries. Ugh, life sucks. But then you win $1 million in the lottery and you're able to make the payment and get to keep the car. Well, screw that car. I want a motorcycle. Great. Life is good. You buy a really fast motorcycle. But then you wreck the motorcycle and are seriously injured. Your medical bills total $1 million. Ugh, you can't walk anymore. Life sucks again. But through your healing, you fought back against everyone who told you you would never walk again. And you do. In fact, you are stronger than ever, and you become a new and better person for it. And so you write a best-selling book that inspires others. Great. Life is good again. But then your dog dies. Life sucks again. Isn't life fun? You sometimes have long periods of time where things are going good. Other times you get into something that wasn't the best and you end up suffering for it for a long time. Sometimes life places you in a crappy situation for a long period of time and you had nothing to do with it outside of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And depending on your spiritual beliefs, you may be dealing with the tug-of-war pull between angels and demons trying to control your life. Or if you're an atheist, perhaps everything in life happens by chance or our own doing. Maybe all of that is true. Or maybe bad things happen because we fall out of alignment with God's will. Who knows? Unfortunately, if it is due to falling out of alignment with God's will, He's playing a cruel joke on us for not telling us what His will is. I'm not going to go in depth on the factors that launch us into the good or bad. I'm simply trying to bring awareness to the idea of equilibrium and what happens when we are drawn away from it. Now that we understand that we have a stable home state and the bad won't stay with us forever, now let's confront the truth of physical existence, known as change, and what happens when we fight the river's current. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus once said, "There's nothing permanent except change." That may be true, but that doesn't make it any easier knowing that. Change is really hard. It's really uncomfortable. Have you ever been so stubborn about something that you just refuse to let it go? This could be a relationship, a career endeavor, a hobby, and so on. In a relationship, for example, you met someone and fell in love. Things were great until the honeymoon phase was over. Then you got to meet your partner for the first time. And your partner got to meet you. Little things each of you does starts getting on each other's nerves, and eventually you realize this relationship is toxic. Everybody is getting dragged down. Eventually you have a big fight and you break up. All right, cool. Moving on. Of course you didn't move on, and months down the road you realize you still love them, and they still love you. And neither of you could remember why you broke up in the first place. So you get back together. Surprise! The same problems are there, and you remember what happened the first go-round. So after a little while, you again break up. Perhaps you try a third or a fourth time. Same results. Eventually, you learn that it is an uphill battle where there is no hope. You were like Sisyphus from the Greek mythology story, who was pushing a boulder uphill for eternity. I've been guilty of this a time or two in my own life. More recently, I had a CNC router side business as a way to make extra money. At least that was the goal. I made a lot of really cool stuff with it. My friend has a laser business, and we would do craft fairs together. It was a lot of fun. His laser engraving side business had been successful and still is, actually. And I would like to do something similar. But it was a constant uphill battle fighting gremlins in the CNC machine, like static electricity issues. I swear that thing would work great for the first 10 hours on a carving and then randomly forget where it was at and destroy the whole workpiece. This happened so many times and it about drove me crazy. It was so freaking frustrating. On top of that, I struggled to find something I could build a business on that didn't take 15 hours to carve. I was practically working multiple full-time jobs just to get something going for extra income, so I wasn't spending near enough time with my wife and kids that I should have. I was trying to do everything on my own. Create something, sand it, finish it, create and edit videos, and take pictures for marketing, and manage social media and websites. It was too much. I learned a ton. And after a long time of fighting to make it work, I realized it wasn't meant to be. For me, anyway. I also approached this endeavor wrong. My goal was to set the CNC up and turn it into a business. But I realized there was a ton to learn just to operate the thing. And I should have learned to make some cool stuff for the fun of it and test the market to see if there would be a demand for it. Honestly, I wish I never went down that path in the first place. Or at least would have thrown in the towel way sooner. You know the saying. Hindsight is 20/20, and we make mistakes. Does anything in your life sound like that? When we hit resistance in our life, it doesn't mean that it is not our path. Resistance can be good. Resistance can help you build strength as you overcome obstacles. But if we only ever have problems with our endeavor and it ends up becoming a money pit and it uses up all of your time and energy, it's okay to throw in the towel. Adjusting course isn't giving up. It means realizing that perhaps you have strayed off the path that you should be on, and you should try aligning yourself with a better fitting path. Another example I think aligns perfectly with this idea is Adam Sandler's movie, Happy Gilmore. Happy grew up playing hockey. He was passionate about hockey. He ate, slept, and breathed hockey. But he was never good enough to go pro, though he was okay at the fighting part. In a scene where his grandma was being evicted from her home for unpaid taxes, Happy made a bet with the people that were taking all of his grandma's stuff. And guess what? After hitting the golf ball 400 yards 3 times in a row, he was a golfing prodigy, and the rest was TV history. Though he would prefer being called a hockey player who happens to be playing golf. Next, I want to begin working on the idea of alignment. If you watch the river begin from a lake, you would see as the water is released that the water is quickly running downhill. The majority will go the best route of least resistance, while the water branches out infinitely into little dead ends where it cannot go any further, and perhaps it adds some detours that eventually meet up with the main river. The water continues on downhill forever until it can't anymore. Or in reverse, a river is dammed to form a lake. The water immediately searches in all directions for the lowest points and fills them with water until the dam stops letting in water. One of my favorite items I made on my CNC router was a set of coasters with many of Arkansas's most popular lakes. If you have ever seen a lake map, most often you will find countless branches going every which way. This is our journey through life. The moment we are born, we begin flowing outward into endless possible directions until we find our true purpose in life. This is where the fun begins. What is your true purpose, and how do we align with it? My response to this question may be a letdown. Only you can figure out your purpose. What is God's will or the universe's plan for your life? Only you can figure that out. I think we learn this by experimenting with possible paths and practicing introspection. What kinds of things are you interested in? What could you see yourself doing? What are you passionate about? If you try something and it doesn't work out, try something else. And we keep doing that until we find something fulfilling and that we have talent in and we can find success in, whatever success means to you. For example, I sure do love to sing, but I don't think I will ever be Taylor Swift. I've made my peace with that, and my singing voice stays in my truck with me. But even in that sense, even those people likely won't be doing that forever. For example, the original lead singer for Avenged Sevenfold, M. Shadows, blew out his voice in 2014, and he wasn't able to continue singing like he used to. So even if you find yourself in a role of a lifetime like that, where it truly seems like your path is this one thing, your path or your purpose may change with time. This is all part of that flow of life. It is not straightforward. It really is like a river that branches as we move along it, with numerous possibilities for our pathways. On a more relatable level, even aging makes it to where we can no longer physically do things we were once passionate about. And thus, it is messy because it is an experiment where we have to try things and be willing to fail, or we stay comfortable where we are at. And I think the key to it all is to have courage to try new things, be willing to make changes when it feels like a path isn't meant for us. Unfortunately, it's not always easy to see that we are pushing a boulder up a never-ending mountain. Sometimes I envy people who seem to have it all figured out. Part of my growth has been envying less and celebrating other people's success more, but it's still there, likely a lingering residue in my shadow. I am no different than you. I am still a work in progress. Some people, though, their lives were just figured out from the start. They married their high school sweetheart, entered their family's business. They had the same hobbies, religion, burial plot ready to go, and so on. What else is there to figure out when everything was laid out perfectly for you? I really couldn't tell you if any of them are truly happy or not. I wonder if they have any regrets of not getting to do other things or if they are completely fulfilled. And either way, I wish them the best. But maybe a part of the fun for the rest of us, and I mean fun in quotation marks, is that we don't know our purpose and we have to go on this rocky adventure to figure it out. It really is tough though, and we head down a lot of wrong ways and dead ends as we make our way through this maze called life. Other paths may not be as set, but things still seem to line up pretty quickly. For example, some people were mature enough to go to college straight out of high school. I sure wasn't. Apparently that was my time to party. They got their dream career and started a family shortly after. And then a lot of people, myself included, are still trying to figure out a lot of those things. The only thing I have really figured out is that I want to spend more time at home with my little family. Biology, of course, plays a role in opening up or limiting paths as well. Some people are charismatic and extroverted enough to lead large groups of people in churches or in politics. Someone I was listening to the other day said this, perhaps it was Joe Rogan, that not everyone is built like Vikings and able to play football in the NFL. Similarly, not everyone is tall enough to play in the NBA, and so on. But there are things we are going to be good at that other people may not be good at. Even as we become more spiritual, we will likely realize that hurting people shouldn't be a part of our lives anymore if our previous pathways included that. The example I'm thinking of would be like a shady salesperson who originally didn't mind taking advantage of people and duping them out of money that they didn't really have. So then, as that person was growing, they might search for a path that lifts people up rather than tearing people down. This river of life that we're flowing down, it knows where it is going, but that doesn't mean we have the slightest clue. I think we likely even head down pathways that seem wrong for the mistakes we end up making, such as those paths that keep others down, but are in reality necessary for our growth, so that we may better align with our real purpose and reach a higher pathway. Life is really puzzling. My current path I am exploring is, of course, this podcast. Anybody close to me knows that I love to talk philosophy and religion. Of course, not everyone is open-minded enough to have a conversation about it. Typically, anything that is different from their views immediately shuts them down. That's okay, though. We all have our thing, and mine just happens to be a touchy subject for people. Hey, I hate politics, so I do my best to avoid that. So oftentimes, I find myself just wanting to tell someone, anyone, about my ideas. And I found few people who wanted to listen. And even those who do listen and engage with me on the subjects often have a hard time following my ideas. So then I created this podcast to try and organize my ideas to help others understand, as well as having an outlet to express myself in this way. And guess what? I am having a ball doing it. Is this part of my path? I don't know. But I enjoy it. It doesn't cost much, and I have the possibility of helping at least one person by doing it. So it's definitely worth a try. And you know what? If the only thing this podcast accomplishes is give my daughters insight into their dad's mind and wisdom, or possibly his psychosis, that is all the motivation I need to do it. Because regardless of whether I live to be 100 or if I die tomorrow, they can still learn from my missteps, and maybe they can do things better than I did. For now, I'm trying to learn to go with the flow. This is the path that works to remain in equilibrium and continues exploring and experimenting with pathways until something clicks. The middle path is what I want to explore next, the pathway of so. Learning to go with the flow of life instead of fighting against it is tricky. It requires us to pause and reflect on situations, which of course requires us to build strength and control over our mind. As with anything, we start small. For example, I drive to work on a 2-lane country highway. And for whatever reason, some days, every tractor in the county has to be driving on that road at the same time. And it's always on times when I'm running behind. If you know anything about tractors, most are going to go about 20 miles per hour and do not care if there's a line of 100 cars lined up behind them. It is so frustrating at times. If I contemplate why my reaction might be frustration, perhaps I am attached to making it work on time. This is understandable, seeing as how we'd like to not get fired. Perhaps I am attached to going the speed limit or slightly over. Maybe I am annoyed at myself for not leaving a few minutes earlier to ensure I am able to make it to work on time. Maybe it's a combination of all these things. I remember another time I stopped at a gas station on the way to work, and all of a sudden, my truck wouldn't start. And I was on time that day. After about 10 minutes, it fired right up. Some kind of fuse burned out, I believe, which was a simple fix the next day. But otherwise, what happened there? Another similar example is when my brother, who's been driving a big truck for a little while now, would be trying to make it to a certain city for a delivery, and things would just stop him. One obstacle after another. One tire blowout after another. And some other problems I can't remember. But I do remember the frustration, and eventually he gave in and realized he wasn't going to make it to his delivery on time. Maybe it was all random things that happened and just so happened to slow us down, but it could be something with better vision than us that was trying to keep us safe. Like if you weren't slowed down, something bad could have happened if you were in a certain spot at a certain time, for example. We can never know for sure as our vision in this existence is really narrow. But if we approach our obstacles from that lens where we try to zoom out a bit, it'll save a lot of heartache as we try to navigate the day. This is essentially responding to life's obstacles with, so, instead of frustration. This is the middle path. Yeah, easier said than done, right? But practice turns knowledge into wisdom, and that is what we are after. You likely have countless opportunities to practice the middle path throughout your day, and we don't have to work on the really big things in the beginning. First, we can start with the smaller inconveniences and notice our reactions. Not going to make it to work on time? Or not going to make the scheduled delivery appointment on time? So. A very recent example that I kind of think fits into this, going with the flow, so idea, is how I've been really busy with working on my goals, and sometimes, though it is rare, sometimes I don't leave myself enough time to make something simple like sandwiches before I have to leave for work. This has happened multiple times before, and I thought, I need to go to the grocery store, I need to get some food since I'm out of food at home. And otherwise, I figured it was just another unhealthy honey bun for lunch type of day. Whatever, it wouldn't be the first, certainly won't be the last. Although today, I'm trying to eat a little healthier. My wife can verify this, and surprise, surprise, that day they fed us at work. Looking back, this has happened most of the times that I ran out of time and didn't bring food. At this point, I don't think it is a coincidence. I think God or the universe is looking out for us, and sometimes we need to trust that the river knows where it is going. Didn't bring any food for lunch at work? So. I'm also of the belief that we're always in school, and inconveniences and obstacles are lessons we need to learn to overcome. And if we pass the test, we can move on to a new lesson. But if we don't learn, we must retake the lesson in another scenario on another day. So there's that. I figured out that it doesn't matter if you're actively trying to grow spiritually or not. You never leave the classroom. You just become aware that you're in school when you work a spiritual path. And you begin seeing the boulders and trees that obstruct your path in the river for what they are, lessons. Literally the day before recording this episode, which I found fascinating, given the examples I was preparing to use on being late to work. I was late to work because my wife's car battery gave out, and I had to go meet her and our girls in town and replace the battery. Of course I was happy to help, but I was also annoyed and attached to the idea of being to work on time. But I soon smiled when I thought, so school is in session. Maybe I wasn't done with that lesson yet. The river of life sure has a sense of humor, and maybe we should as well. I want to return to the example from earlier, where we had good and bad events alternating. If we return to the example I talked about earlier, you were riding the wave up to the peak and then heading down into the trough. The next wave came and lifted you back up, and you fell back into the trough yet again. You were riding the wave instead of letting it flow around you and through you. You were building a nice life and family. Life was good. But then you lost your job. Then you won $1 million in the lottery. But then you wrecked your new motorcycle from your lottery winnings and have $1 million in medical bills. And finally, you overcame your struggles and became an inspiration to many. There were many ups and downs. But there was one constant during that process, and that was the equilibrium point you eventually returned to after each of those events. If we rode the high all the way up to the very top, like when we won the $1 million lottery, what happens when you're up in the sky with a mountain of money no longer supporting you. You fall back to earth and you hit the ground really hard, right? In the opposite sense, the further down you go when you got laid off from your job, the harder it is to recover, and it will take longer than it needed to. What appears to be good or bad now may not be all that it seems. Remember, we're on a river. So let's revise our story a bit. You just got married. You have a nice little house and are building a little family. But then you lost your job, and now you can't make your car payment. The bank threatens to repossess your car. Can't pay rent or buy groceries. But then you win $1 million at the lottery, and you're able to make the payment and get to keep the car. Well, screw that car. I want a motorcycle. So you buy a really fast motorcycle. But then you wreck the motorcycle, and you are seriously injured. Your medical bills total $1 million. And you can't walk anymore. But through your healing, you fought back against everyone who told you you would never walk again, and you do. In fact, you are stronger than ever, and you've become a new and better person for it. You write a best-selling book that inspires others. But then your dog dies. Maybe not an also moment on this one. A job layoff may have been just what you needed to finally leave your job you hated, but were too afraid to leave because of the security it provided. God or the universe, or whatever you want to call it, may have given you new opportunities to improve your life. But if you remain down and depressed for very long, you may miss out on those opportunities. Life works in mysterious ways, and perhaps that lottery money you won wasn't for you to live comfortably, but instead you were going to need it to pay off crazy medical bills in the future. And when our loved ones pass away, well, that one is just really hard, and we'll be forced to endure the grieving process. We never really know what life has in store for us, and it's hard to see the whole when we are so zoomed in to our personal lens, which we view our lives through. I know it is all easier said than done. Next, I want to look at challenges we face when trying to go with the flow. Some challenges to going with the flow of life include the ability or inability to relinquish attachments. I can see attachment as making up the majority of the reason we are unable to go with the flow of life. If we don't have the courage to let go when it is necessary, we keep repeating the same lessons. This is a school we are in, after all. In the case of a relationship, if one person refuses to grow and the other is trying to become a better person, or rather, if all their partner does is beat them down, like, you're never going to amount to anything, so I don't know why you're trying so hard, or something along those lines that attempts to hold them down, then that should be an indicator that it's time to move on. The Buddhist said that the root of suffering is attachment. In our example of the toxic relationship, this could be attachment to their relationship partner, which is understandable, but it may even be attachment to being comfortable. Often, it feels easier to stay put than it does to make changes, and thus we have to do some introspection. And we might even ask people close to us what they see from their perspective. Another part of our attachment that gets us in trouble is that we are interconnected in this web with other people, and when things happen to others, we often feel like it happened to us. We can control some things as part of our life, but unfortunately we can't do the same when it comes to others around us. We will lose people and animals, and it will hurt. Things will happen to people we care about. That's all a fact of life. Sometimes things happen and we get thrust into bad situations. And of course, we don't want to lose the things important to us. I really like my truck, or my motorcycle, or my house, or my TV. But sometimes what appears to be bad can be things that prepare us for blessings. However, we don't always get things right because we are in this imperfect human form that is prone to mistakes. And our ego certainly wants us to be able to maintain as part of our survival. However, many things in our lives that are in need of change are a lot more subtle than the examples that I've mentioned thus far. If you look inward, we can reflect on our circumstances and learn if we've been fighting an uphill battle that will never end. And literally, are you pushing a giant rock up a never-ending hill? Is it holding you down in depression? And so on. Now, don't get me wrong. Challenges aren't necessarily a reason to give up. Challenges make us better people. They make us better partners in relationships. They can drive us to success in business and so on. Sometimes it is worth staying put and fixing the problems in ourselves that may be causing the obstacles in the first place. In fact, I think that is the best place to start, because you need to know if you are the problem. Don't push the problems on others. Look at yourself first. And if you are, then you can make changes and become better, and then reassess the situation. In my own case, working on the smaller things, such as my reactions to slow traffic on the way to work, add up to problem reduction and the ability to go with the flow on multiple levels. For example, when I shine light on my anger and frustration, it translates to my life at home with my wife and kids, and even how I handle frustrating situations at work. But if the constant challenges we face no longer make us better, and they begin weakening us and making us worse, we've got to know when to throw in the towel and start looking towards a new path. So here's the big question. Does life get easier when you align with your life's purpose, or God's will, or the flow of the universe, whatever you choose to call it? Maybe so. Maybe not. Life on this physical plane is hard for everyone, enlightened masters included. There is nothing straightforward about it. It is the messiest, most intricate experience in existence. And perhaps that's the very point. That's the fun of it. Sometimes it's good to hold on to parts of our lives that challenge us, that strengthen us. Other times, it's necessary to let go, to trust that the river knows exactly where it is heading, and that we are meant to flow with it. There's a great peace and a kind of wisdom that arises when we stop trying to steer the current and instead move with it. When we begin loosening our grip on control, or rather the illusion of control, we start to live with less resistance to the only constant there is, change. Life is going to unfold however it unfolds. It's not so much happening to us as it is happening through us and around us. The river of life flows where it will. And the more we resist its movement, the more we miss the blessings hidden in its boulders and rapids that lie in our path. If we're going to learn to stand firm in the surf as the waves crash and recede, life will still bring pain and difficulty, but we'll suffer less as life flows through us. By standing in that middle space, neither clinging to the peaks nor sinking into the depths, we find equilibrium. And there's peace there. And in that still point, in the heart of the current, we may finally glimpse the quiet joy that has always carried us, the river's flow itself. I want to end by sowing unity in the world. I like to end my meditations with a simple loving kindness exercise that sends love to yourself and others. If you would like, you may repeat it after me. May we all find peace in the current. May we all find courage in the rapids. May we all find gratitude for the journey itself. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. May all beings be free from suffering. And may we all remember to go with the flow. Thank you for joining me on this journey today with the Unifying Field podcast. We've touched on just a fraction of the vastness that connects us all, but remember, the exploration never ends. And keep asking questions, keep seeking answers, and stay curious. As we part ways, may you carry a little more wonder, a little more peace, and a renewed sense of connection with the world around you. Till next time, take a deep breath, question everything, and remember, the infinite is always within reach. Please like and subscribe and share with anyone you may think will enjoy this type of content.